Hello there. Welcome. Today is the 19th of July. I am Paul Glumaz, and this is being brought to you by General Welfare Presents. Okay, we're heading into the second part of July on our way to the summer month of August. And coming out of August into September, certain things are necessary if this country and the world is going to survive. You have essentially in September, you have the end of the bailout, effects of the bailout that was run on the international banking system under the cover of the COVID-19 bailout. In other words, most of the money that was emitted by central banks in Europe, especially the Federal Reserve, were to bail out the banks under the cover of the COVID-19 virus situation. And now that's coming to an end. Also, there is an end to the ability to sustain the unemployed, and they have the moratoriums on foreclosures and so forth. So all of that's coming to a head. Also, all of the small businesses and all of the medium-sized businesses that are going to have to begin filing for bankruptcy and so forth. So this is all coming into a head in September. Now, in that context, you are about 2 months away from the presidential race at that point. And it's expected that the masters of the financial system of the City of London will then also go along with all of this, drop the what you might call the pull the plug on the financial system, which and then blame it on the president of the United States, Trump, and force in the chaos, force him out of office in that context of a financial collapse. Now, that's what it looks like to me. Okay. Now, since this will probably all happen before the election, and we have a president under an insurrectionary situation from within the government, from the media, and from the institutions, and from the Republicans as well as the Democrats, how is the president going to handle this crisis? Because that's the only institution that can handle it, is the institution of the presidency. How is the president going to handle this in the context of this embattled situation going into an election in which the entire media is attacking him every day? The Republicans are blocking any infrastructure program that would actually ameliorate the situation. And the Democrats are going all out with this crazy New Deal. Crazy Green New Deal. This crazy Green New Deal is the end of the country. So in that context, how are you going to get the Congress to work with the president, or for the president to act with unilateral executive orders to deal with the crisis, which is coming in September, most likely, going into the election? We're in a crisis now, but this is where it really gets serious. Now, there are two things that I think are absolutely essential to happen in September in order for the president of the United States to deal with the crisis within the United States, and also for other nations to deal with the similar crisis. Think about this. You have this massive push for the Green New Deal, for channeling all credit away from infrastructure development, away from nuclear, away from anything that's going to be productive, into something that's totally non-productive. This is the Biden campaign now. Okay? And then you have this crisis. How do you turn that around? How do you get the right economic policies in place? How do you get Glass-Steagall in place? How do you get the funds to revive the economy in that situation? Now, the two things essentially that are going to have to happen is, one is a domestic matter, and the other is an international matter. And the domestic matter that has to happen is by September, there have to be indictments by Durham, Barr, the Justice Department, the grand jury. There have to be indictments. And the reason you have to have indictments of people like John Brennan, Clapper, Comey, and others is they and many others have been acting outside the law in this against a president, against a candidate for president, and then later president, with such impunity, with such abandon, that you have to have an indictment, because only with an indictment can you establish that the president has any power, the system has any power, that there's any reckoning. One, the population won't think that there's any hope. And two, those people who would otherwise not be part of the coup against the president are going to be part of the coup because they don't see any other power than the power which is running the coup. And in this role, the Senate Republicans are playing a major role because they have not been supporting the president. They have been pretending in some cases to be on his side, but they've actually not been. Lindsey Graham, Burr, all these people, they've been actually working to undermine the president, not to assist in this situation. So that's where we are. The president is going into that. So if there are no indictments and there's no punitive act against the perpetrators of these treasonous crimes, then how is the population going to have any trust in the system of government that we live in? So that's very important. Now, if their indictments occurs, then essentially that creates a potential for the president to act in the time of crisis with some authority. If they don't have indictments, the president does not have authority. It's not necessarily that the president is doing the indictments, but the system has no authority, which is the presidential system. The second thing that has to happen, and this was something that the LaRouche movement has been promoting since last year, was that we're coming into this conjunctural crisis, and nations, the major nations, in this case, the four powers, the United States, India, Russia, and China, have to sit down and coordinate their response to the crisis. And in that coordination, come up with a new architecture. But the important thing is they have to coordinate that response to the crisis. That you can't have a crisis occur with no international coordination for dealing with it. And the coordination has to be at the level of the nations, not at the level of multilateral institutions, the international banking, whatever. It has to be done from the sovereignty of nations, because otherwise there's no sovereignty. It's just some bureaucratic agency on behalf of an international criminal financial system deciding what's going to happen to nations in a crisis. And mainly they're going to decide to kill your country, basically. So now, then in January, Russian President Putin put forward a proposal to have the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council meet on these matters. And then later put forward further efforts on these matters. And the matters include the following: the COVID-19 situation, the economic crisis, the systemic financial collapse, and the very dangerous direction towards war that's going on, because there's a massive propaganda effort coming out of the British intelligence and the Jackson Institute and the neocons and so forth to drive the United States into a war with China and Russia. The idea is to not have this external media control, this external environment determine how the response to this crisis is going to be. The purpose is to have the nations actually sit down. Those 5 nations actually sit down. These are the nations that created the post-war era. These are the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council. Russia, the United States, China, France, and the United Kingdom. Now, the presidents of France and the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom are not opposed to doing that. It's the permanent bureaucracies which are opposed to doing that. It's the intelligence community. It's the deep state in these countries. It is the monarchy. It's the financial system. But the actual elected governments, whether it's Boris Johnson or even Macron, they are not opposed to having this discussion. But barring that discussion, they're stuck in this geopolitical framework, which does not allow for these countries to sit down and have a trustworthy dialogue about what they are collectively going to do to deal with the crisis. Now, Putin intends to have this summit, and I think the United States has agreed and the other countries have agreed in September. That might be the last chance for the nations to collaborate on how they're going to deal with the crisis. Barring that, is a very good chance there will be no collaboration and there will be no deliberation, and you will have a mess beyond belief. You have the virus, you have the COVID-19 virus, which is going to get worse in many places in the world. You have food problems emerging, and you have economic problems emerging. Those are going to accelerate, and you have a financial disintegration on top of that. And then you have wars. The 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. That's the policy. That's the policy coming out of the elite of the world. The elite based in London and Wall Street and Europe and the United States. That's the policy they're committed to. That's not Trump's policy, but he's surrounded by people who are reflecting the pressures to implement those kind of policies. So that's the situation. Now, a very significant echo of this occurred by a retired Indian diplomat who, from 98 to 2001, was the Indian ambassador to Turkey. His name is M.K. Badru Kumar, and he has a blog called The Indian Punchline. And in that blog, he has an article dated earlier this week entitled, "Putin Had a Dream to Reset the World Order." And in that blog, he lays it out exactly the way the LaRouche movement lays it out. Okay? In using off the same language that Helga Zepp LaRouche has used on the international stage. And what he says, I'll quote you, Putin's initiative reflects his conviction that even a multitude of small steps and measures to deal with all the different crises will no more suffice. Nothing short of a grand design can provide a comprehensive solution. There are several aspects of a grand design. For a start, the dramatic crisis currently menacing the world calls for a new world economic order based on a new Bretton Woods system. An investment program in a tradition of FDR's New Deal could provide a very useful common thread among the P5, permanent 5 heads of state of the UN Security Council, all of whom have at one time or another referenced FDR in positive terms. And that includes Boris Johnson of the United Kingdom, who referenced it recently. Equally, the agenda should include Glass-Steagall bank separation, an industrial development plan on a global scale, a new deal for the entire world, and a credit system. A new Bretton Woods, and most important, a worldwide health system, i.e. a modern health system that could measure up to at least the standard the Chinese demonstrated in the Wuhan fight against the pandemic. And Putin was intensely conscious that a P5 summit in September will, in all likelihood, be the last chance to establish a basis of trust for a strategic orientation of international relations among the 5 nuclear powers. How far will the neoliberal establishment go along? Or not? And will they continue with their all-consuming efforts to remove Trump? One has to take into account that the claim about the Chinese origin of the Wuhan virus being used as a weapon comes from British Secret Service heads, former British Secret Service heads Sir John Sawers and Sir Richard Dearlove, and was put forward by the London-based Jackson Society. So he says the deadly power center in London also masterminded the Russiagate to create a quagmire for the Trump presidency. Now this is a former senior Indian diplomat who has decades of experience in these international geopolitical situations. And it's in that context that he's speaking this way, that he's actually saying this. And this is dovetailing what Helga LaRouche has been saying, what our movement's been saying, what the LaRouche movement's been saying. So this is very significant. I say it's significant because it's coming from a different angle, a different quarter, and it's saying the same thing. The time is now for that summit. And if you put these two things together, then in that context, Trump has the leverage as president, using the institution of the president, using the presidency to act, to deal with the crisis, to get the infrastructure program going, to get that's being blocked by the House, by the Republicans in the Senate, to get emergency measures to deal with the collapse of the system, and do so in an orderly way without the chaos, without the disruptions, without chaos. This is very, very important. And this is where we are. We're a month and a half away from September. And we are at that point where you're going to have something in place. Now, to make matters even worse, you have a situation where up until now, I've been expecting that the candidacy of Joe Biden, in which all the Democrats and now a large part of Republicans are oriented around, was merely a preparation for then switching somebody else in and during the convention. Someone maybe like New York Governor Mario Cuomo. Or Andrew Cuomo. I'm now beginning to believe that Biden is the candidate. Biden will be the Democratic candidate. And what you have is a person, the first time in U.S. history, that you have a president campaigning for both president and subsequent to the election a 25th Amendment. We've never had a president campaigning for both presidency and the 25th Amendment. This is unprecedented in U.S. history, where somebody who's clearly got cognitive issues, is dementia, has a recall problem, is being put forward as a presidential candidate by all across the board, as if by agreement between all of the institutional factions. They've all come around this person who clearly is not going to be able to be the president functionally. Now, this creates a very serious problem because the president is the person who is responsible. So now you have somebody who might go in who has no capability of being responsible. What does that mean? That means you don't have a president. You don't have a functioning presidency. You don't have a functioning presidency in a time of crisis. And to make matters worse, who's going to make the decision to launch a nuclear war? Not the president. He's not capable of making a decision. But he could very well launch a nuclear war under external guidance. That is how complicated the situation is. Now, do the people promoting Biden know this? Yes. Does the political establishment know this? Yes. Does the Democratic Party leadership knows this? Yes. To make matters worse, Joseph Biden is adopting the Green New Deal. $1 trillion to be spent on refurbishing buildings to lower the use of energy. $1 trillion, excuse me. And trillions for solar and wind. It's insane. Any person uneducated, without any degrees, can figure it out. How much energy is required to manufacture the goods that you need to sustain a society at a certain standard of living? It's not stupid. It's very clear that if you do the Green New Deal, you're absolutely destroying the economy, the economy's productive potential to sustain the population at a certain living standard, at any living standard. And if you do it on a global scale, you're not going to be able to support the world's population, period. You're going to have mass population reduction. Anybody can see that. Oh, it's the climate emergency. It's the climate emergency. There's no evidence that there's a climate emergency. And the president, to his credit, is saying, no, we can go fusion, we can go nuclear, we can go development, we can solve these problems. We're human beings. He's saying the Green New Deal is a complete destruction of the nation. He's right. So let's look at how this thing is working. Every day, it's an all-out assault in all of the media against the president. I've never seen anything like that. Okay. Every day. When they do a poll on support for Biden, there is no support for Biden. There's only support to get rid of Trump. It's only anti-Trump. So 85% of the people who plan to vote for Biden are doing so not because they like Biden and not because they support him. It's because they're against Trump. On the other hand, the people who are going to vote for Trump are going to vote for Trump because they support Trump. So this gives you some flavor of the situation. So we're going into this situation. And the two things that I laid out, indictments domestically and the permanent 5 UN Security Council meeting are required by September or sometime in September. if there's going to be the basis for dealing with what's coming down. So that is where we are right now. I appreciate your watching this, and stay tuned to this, because there's a lot coming. There's a lot coming, and this is the most amazing thing that I'm seeing right now. I've never seen anything like this before. And the next episode, I'm going to go into this question of, I'll probably go into this question of collective guilt. That is how people are manipulated emotionally so that they cannot think things through. Even something as simple as the Green New Deal. Why it's insane. Why it can't work. And that's kind of what we're looking at right now. So until next time, I wish you the best. I wish you the best during this period. This is Paul Glumaz, and this is being brought to you by General Welfare Presents.